Hello again, Ambassador.
Hi.
We'll try not to use all of this time as a courtesy to you. Just want to go through some distinctions between your opener and your deposition and some other witnesses. In your opening statement today, you said President Trump directed us to talk with Rudy, correct?
Correct.
But then you and I had a little bit of a back and forth about the president just said, talk to Rudy. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you took that to mean if we wanted to move forward with these types of things, Rudy was the place to go?
Rudy was the guy.
Okay. But President Trump didn't direct you to talk to Rudy, correct?
It wasn't an order. It was, if you want to work on this, this is the guy you got to talk to.
Ambassador Volker in his deposition said, I didn't take it as an instruction, but just as a comment. Talk to Rudy. You know, he knows these things, and you've got some bad people around him. I mean, that, referring to the Ukrainian. Ambassador Volker hasn't testified that there's any sort of order or direction to talk to Rudy.
I don't know what he testified. It became very clear to all three of us that if we wanted to move the relationship forward, President Trump was not really interested in engaging. He wanted Rudy to handle it. And as I said in my opening statement, Secretary Perry took the lead and made the initial contact with Rudy, and that's when we began working with him.
And as to the question of whether Mr. Giuliani was expressing the desire specifically of the President of the United States, in your deposition, you said, I don't know. I don't know if this was coming out of Rudy Giuliani irrespective of the President. Correct?
I'm not going to dispute what I said in my deposition.
Okay.
That's true, yeah.
And we walked through all your communications with Rudy Giuliani, and they're not a lot, right?
Correct.
Ambassador Volker in his deposition on the same question said, I did not have that impression. I believe Mr. Giuliani was doing his own communications. And, you know, granted, Mr. Giuliani had business interests in Ukraine, correct?
Now I understand he did.
Okay.
I didn't know that at the time.
With Messrs. Parnas and Fruman, correct?
A lot of new names I've learned.
Okay, and you had never met with those folks?
No.
Okay. And then in your September 9th communication with the President, during your deposition, that was a striking moment when you walked us through your telephone call with President Trump on September 9th.
And by the way, I still cannot find a record of that call because the State Department and the White House cannot locate it, but I'm pretty sure I had the call on that day.
But whether it was the 9th or the 8th, yeah, you had this call. It was extremely memorable, right?
It was.
And you've been very honest, and we're not trying to give you a hard time on all the times you don't recall. We're just trying to say that there's a lot of important events that have happened that the committee's asked you about, and you've honestly said, I don't recall. But the call with President Trump on September 9th or the 8th, you recall it vividly, right? I
recall it vividly because it was keyed by the sort of frantic emails from Ambassador Taylor. I had, again, prior to that call, had all kinds of theories as to why things weren't moving, why there was no White House meeting, why there was no aid, why there was no this, why there was no that. And I was getting tired of going around in circles, frankly. So I made the call, and I asked, as I said, the open-ended question, what do you want from Ukraine? Right. And that's when I got the answer.
He was unequivocal, nothing.
What I said in the text is what I heard.
And I'm curious, was that vignette in your opener today?
I don't think so.
How come? It's so memorable, so striking.
I don't know. It was in my previous testimony, and I assumed if people had questions, they would bring it up.
Okay. I mean, this is an example. You know, a lot of witnesses during the course of this investigation have dealt with ambiguities in different ways, and some have resolved them in the light least favorable to the president over and over again. This is an exculpatory fact shedding some light on the president's state of mind about the situation about the, you know.
And I'm happy to discuss it.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering why you didn't mention it in your opener.
There were so many things I wanted to include in my opening, and my opening was already, I think, 45 minutes or something. It would have been an hour and a half. There are a lot of things I'd like to have mentioned.
Okay, but you only had a couple conversations with the president. And we're trying to evaluate whether
It was not
president.
purposeful, trust me.
Okay. Talking about striking conversations, Mr. Holmes, when he came here last Friday in the basement, I'll tell you, he thought your conversation that you had with the president was like the most memorable thing he's ever experienced.
How many conversations has he had with the president?
He probably hasn't had any. But he was energized, enthusiastic about telling us about this conversation. And
so not only did I buy him lunch, but I also provided entertainment?
Yeah, and he conferred with us that he regaled anyone that he came across with this story. And that's, I guess, a great discussion for Thursday. But other than the colorful language, and he was definitely moved by the color, but he was unequivocal that you brought up the Bidens in the post-call discussion. And he said something to the effect of the president's only interested in big things, and Mr. Holmes said that, oh, there's a lot of big things going on in the Ukraine, like there are. There's a war. Ukraine's under attack from the east by Russia. And he puts words in your mouth to the effect of, no, the president only cares about investigations like Rudy is pitching about the Bidens. And what's important about this is the day after the 725 call. And what's reported by Mr. Holmes, and you, to the extent you've confirmed it, isn't anything different than happened on the 725 call. Agreed? From the president's standpoint?
With 2020 hindsight, now that we've had the transcript of the call, the Bidens were clearly mentioned on the call, but I wasn't making the connection with the Bidens.
Right, but with regard to the president, it was just mentioning investigations.
That's all he said on the phone was investigations, I think.
But you told us time and again that you never realized the Bidens were part of any of this, the Burisma, and you talked about a continuum, and you never came to understand that until maybe as late as September 25th, correct?
I don't know the exact date, but it was pretty late.
Okay. And Ambassador Volker said the Bidens never came up after his one breakfast meeting with Mayor Giuliani, where he testified that he tried to disabuse the mayor of anything relating to the Bidens.
And I think Secretary Perry publicly stated that he never heard Biden either until the end.
So when you testify here today that you have no recollection of mentioning the Bidens to Mr. Holmes, that's not just a recollection, that's based on your state of mind at that point in time and your state of mind up to September 25th, correct?
I wasn't into investigating the Bidens.
Okay. So it's very surprising to you that he would mention that, right?
It was very surprising to me.
I want to go back to a couple things in your statement. This July 26th meeting with President Zelensky, earlier in the day from this lunch time event we've been talking about. During the course of the meeting with President Zelensky, did any of the parties discuss what came up on the telephone call?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so President Zelensky didn't express any concerns about the content of the call, right?
I mean, all I heard about that call was that it was a good call. It was friendly, everyone was happy, I was delighted to hear that so that we could now move to the next phase, which was the meeting.
Okay, so you can tell us with certainty that nobody talked about demands in that meeting or fulfilling the president's demands?
I don't remember exactly. Again, this is a great example, Mr. Castor, of where I would have loved to have seen the notes from the meeting. I didn't take any notes, but I know there were notes taken. But I don't remember any heated conversation in the meeting. I remember it being a really, really friendly, good meeting. And that's why I said what I did to the president the next day, which was, Zelensky will do whatever you want. He's very happy.
And you don't remember any discussion by President Zelensky of lamenting how he had to navigate this difficult situation, right?
I don't know. I know that that was in the whistleblower complaint, something about navigating something. I didn't remember anything like that.
I want to get back to your...
Gentlemen, yield just a second.
Of course.
Which would be another helpful thing also, Ambassador, is if we actually had heard from the whistleblower and we had testimony of the whistleblower. Then you wouldn't have to be up here speculating as much and guessing, because you would have a source that would have been interviewed. We have his complaint. We could have matched it up with your testimony along with the people from OMB that would have made it very easy for you to testify, so you wouldn't have to just try to remember all this stuff and chase conspiracy theories around that the Democrats have continued to lay out for the last 6 weeks, moving from quid pro quo to extortion to bribery to where are we at today, obstruction of justice, and now back to quid pro quo. We wouldn't have to do all that if the whistleblower would have testified. You wouldn't have to speculate about what the whistleblower only had in his or her complaint that nobody seems to know. Yield back to Mr. Castor.
Thank you, Mr. Nunes. I want to turn to a couple of times in your opener, you said everyone was in the loop. And I just want to, these televised proceedings, sometimes we lose track of things, and everyone was not in the loop with your speculation or your guess that in the absence of any credible explanation for the suspension of aid, I later came to believe that the resumption of security aid would not occur without public statement from the Ukraine. Everyone wasn't in the loop with that, right?
Well, the secretary was, because that's why I sent my email.
But your emails, let's look at your emails. There's 2 emails that you sent to the secretary, right? That are here?
August 22nd?
Right, and August 11th?
August 11th.
So the August 11th email, we went through this before. I'm sorry to go through it again. You said to the secretary, Kurt and I negotiated a statement from Z to be delivered for our review in a day or 2. The contents will hopefully make the boss happy enough to authorize an invitation. Z plans to have a big presser on the openness subject next week. A couple things here. This is only relating to the White House meeting, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
And this is only, this is just investigations generally, making a public statement of openness generally, right?
Well, I think by August 11th, Mr. Castor, I think we were talking about 2016 in Burisma. The investigations generally was really early in the...
Okay, but do we know that Secretary Pompeo knows that?
I think so. I think...
Why?
Well, only because I think Counselor Breckbull was briefed on all of these things. And
by who? By you?
By, I believe, Ambassador Volker, by myself.
That's not what he testified to. I mean, did you?
Ambassador or Counselor Breckbull testified? I didn't know he had testified.
No, Ambassador Volker.
Oh, okay.
He didn't testify that he briefed Mr. Breckbull. I mean, this email to the secretary is talking about this statement, which, by the way, I mean, you said Kurt and I negotiated a statement, and the statement never went.
Didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, Ambassador Volker said it wasn't a good idea. Mr. Yarmark said it wasn't a good idea. But what you're writing to the secretary here is just it relates to a generic openness subject, right?
Yeah, but I think the secretary, though, was on the July 25th call, which obviously I wasn't on and I didn't know about.
Okay, but you used this email to suggest that everyone was in the loop, that like security sector assistance was tied to some sort of act by the Ukrainians.
No, I don't think I said that. I don't think I said that this assistance was involved here.
Okay.
I think
so what was everyone in the loop about then?
Well, the secretary was in the loop that we had negotiated a statement.
Okay.
I'm fairly comfortable that the Secretary knows that where the statement was at that point, in other words, the 2016 in Burisma, and that Lisa passed that along to him and kept him informed.
Okay, so we can agree that at this point in time, the Secretary wasn't in a loop, that there was a conditionality on the security sector assistance.
Hold on a second. Are you asking about July 19th, Exhibit 4?
I was asking about your email to the Secretary on August 11th.
Oh, okay.
There's,
Well, on July 19th, which the Secretary was on, I talked about fully transparent investigation and turn over every stone, and the Secretary was on that.
okay.
So,
But you testified at your deposition that on July 19th, in this continuum you talked about,
yeah.
at that point in the continuum, it was just a generic investigation. Wasn't anything involving,
I think it went, again, I'm not trying to put words in any way, I think it went from the original generic from, May 23rd when we left the Oval Office, we're talking about corruption and oligarchs, until Mr. Giuliani started to become involved, and then it transitioned into the Burisma.
you hadn't even talked to Giuliani by that time. This is July 19th.
Mr. Castor, with all respect, will you allow him to finish his answers, please?
Sorry, use the mic.
Will you allow him to finish his answers,
Of course,
please?
I apologize.
We were communicating with Mr. Giuliani through Secretary Perry and through Ambassador Volker. I wasn't talking to Mr. Giuliani directly until after August 1st.
But as of July 19th, weren't we still on the generic part of the continuum?
I don't know. I believe by then we were talking about Burisma in 2016, to be candid.
But not Biden.
No, not Biden.
Okay.
No.
And then turning to your email of August 11th.
Yeah, got it.
I'm sorry, we just dealt with that. August the 22nd.
22nd?
Yeah, it's page 23 of your opener.
Yeah, I got it.
And this is where you were requesting a pull aside for the president, and this is when the president was
He was still going to go.
going to go. It was before the hurricane.
Right.
Bump that off his schedule. I would ask Zelensky to look him in the eye and tell him that once Ukraine's new justice folks are in place, Zelensky should be able to move forward publicly and with confidence on those issues of importance to the president and the United States. Hopefully that'll break the logjam. And at this point in time, the issues of importance to the president of the United States were what?
The 2 investigations.
Okay. But nothing to do with Vice President Biden, right?
Again, I didn't make the connection.
I want to just pivot briefly to the president's concerns about foreign assistance. Under Secretary Hale, who will be with us later today, testified that during this relevant time frame, there was a real focus to re-examine all federal aid programs. Are you aware of that interest of the president?
I'm generally aware of the president's skepticism toward foreign aid and, conditioning foreign aid on certain things. I'm generally aware of that, yes.
And Ambassador Hale testified, and his testimony's been public, almost a zero-based concept, that each assistance program and each country that receives the program be evaluated. The program made sense, that we avoid nation building, and that we not provide assistance to countries that are lost to us in terms of policy, whether it's because corruption or another reason. Is that something you were aware of at the time?
Generally, yes.
Okay. And you're certainly aware that the president was concerned about the European allies' contributions to the region?
Exactly why I was involved.
Okay. So, you know, as we get down to September 11th, right before the, you know, you're advocating that the pause be lifted, correct? But
Yeah,
you
I didn't
can't-
think I personally didn't think the pause should have ever been put in place.
Okay.
Yeah.
But as we get down to September 11th and you're talking with Senator Johnson and so forth, you don't know with certainty that the genuine reason the president was implementing the pause wasn't because of his concerns about the allies or his concerns about foreign assistance generally, or that he wasn't just trying to hold the aid as long as he could to see what he could, you know, what type of information he could get about those two subjects.
Fair enough.
Okay. I am really trying to finish up before so I can yield some time back. Do we have anything else, Mr.?
I have nothing else.
Thank you. Yield back.
Chairman yields back.
Back the balance of our time.